addition to the farm and those two Orioles. I know their nest is just across the other side of my yard, but I've walked over there and I can't find it. I'd like to get it when it was done. They don't return to use the same nest?
And we are live
Some birds
on
do,
air.
some birds don't. It's breed dependent, and I'm not sure which ones do which.
And Bridgette's live on air too. This is great. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You are listening to The New Way on Steampunk Radio. That's steampunk with 2 E's. My name is Karen. I am your host for the show. And I have with us today a guest appearance from someone we value greatly here at The New Way. We are coming to you live in our Ornery Radio Clubhouse chat room. And we did hear from Bridgette last week. She's gracing with us with her presence, wisdom, and intelligence. Once again this week, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. She has been a lifelong student and practitioner of shamanism, among other things. She's a healer, energy worker, nutritionist, and an urban farm project consultant. Basically, she's the jack of all trades, expert at all. We love having her here. Thank you, Bridgette, for being here.
Hey girl, you're cutting out. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear Bridgette clearly, but Karen is cutting out.
Yeah.
Same.
So how would you fix that, Lenny? No.
Tell us, Bridgette, how you're doing.
I'm doing super great. I'm just waking up this morning and getting my, getting my world started today.
You've been taking a course going out and learning about native plants. Can you tell us more about the native plants and what you've been doing and what they've been teaching you, why it's important?
Well, let's see. I think, to some extent, all plants are native or originate, from an older, time frame. I mean, we do have plants that are hybrid. A lot of the plants, even organic, that we eat are, kind of in the hybrid category. But plants and seeds are important because, we wouldn't really have anything to eat. We wouldn't really have any medicine. And I also think, plants are important because, they are older than we are. And especially if you're dabbling with ones that are, out in the field, which I'm doing a lot of, which is wildcrafting. Those plants are much older. I've been working with horsetail, and horsetail is, said to be, who knows for sure, 300 million years old. And so in my neck of the woods, it's probably the oldest thing that exists, like the ancient wise one. And so working with it, is really teaching me a lot about just a lot of things on multiple levels. Just the communication that takes place with these plants is pretty incredible.
When you talk to a plant, how do you sense that it's talking back?
How do I sense that it's talking back? Okay, well, I know that there are a lot of other people who have types of communications with plants. And I think everybody who communicates with them is different. I have been communicating with everything since I came here. I'm a little bit different. I'm actually a legitimate star child. So I started communicating with everything in this world before I started communicating in the language here, English or whatever else. Um, sometimes I actually hear the words in my head. Sometimes I see and visuals. So it just really depends on what I'm doing and what's going on. I mean, I have made friends, say Raven, and Raven is kind of an indicator for me. So whenever I see Raven like flying over my head going, hey, this way, and then it'll fly off in a direction. Say if I'm outside working with the plants, then I know that it's, I should really follow where Raven wants to take me or where Raven wants me to look at. And then sometimes there'll be, communications through that. So a lot of it just really depends on, maybe a lot of it might have to depend on where I'm at, because I'm pretty good at also not being, completely open to everything, because sometimes it's just a bit too much. And when I was younger in life, it just wore me out. And a lot of everything wants to talk to you, everything wants to communicate. It's actually, kind of loud and
Yeah, well, I know last week you told me that in your Mullen adventure, the horsetails were guiding. And that seemed... Do you think the horsetail and the Mullen were talking to each other also?
Oh, yeah. I think, they talk to each other through root systems, right? Through mycelium. I also think that I do believe that plants can see, period, end of story. Their leaf makeup is similar to that of a rabbit retina. So when there's light presence, then that means that, to a certain extent, if you step close enough to that plant, it can see you. I'm not as sure exactly what that looks like, from a plant's perspective, but I'm pretty sure that you're not going to be sneaking up on them. I'm sure they have a lot of feelings. They have a lot of senses, trees too, but during the daylight, they legitimately, literally could actually see you coming up to them. So
I'm having an interesting time here where I'm at, because I'm watching the corn grow, and the corn's putting on, I think it's put on 2 feet in 6 days.
Yeah.
And so when people talk about watching corn grow, I always thought, oh, you're going to be bored to death. And actually watching corn grow, there's nothing... I think my energy is being transmitted to the corn. And there's a big tree here that I sit under during the show, and without being plugged in, my tablet just goes boo, because the tree is drawing power off the tablet. But I think it's feeding to the corn, and that we're all connected here. The corn color, being that fine, bright green, is right at 432 wavelengths, nanometers. And it's one of those things that I'm so in tune with the nature right now and watching it, that birds and other animals are just walking up to me and communicating. And as long as I allow my imagination to translate what they're saying into English, I think they're really speaking to me in English, except that universal translator that goes through the brain and the tongue, we don't have a babblefish in our ear, so we don't hear what they're saying. They know exactly what we're saying.
Yeah,
And
I think that's true. Yeah,
earlier,
can you ramble on for just a couple seconds? I need to mute for just 1 second.
sure.
I'll be right back.
Before the show, we were listening to Naughty Beaver, and he was talking about starseeds also. So the fact that Bridgette is a starseed who's early 50s, Naughty Beaver is a starseed who is early 40s, I'm a starseed who is early 60s. Each set of starseeds are coming in more and more apparent, and there's more people who are on the wavelength. But the wavelength of the Muggle world, the Harry Potter world of non-wizards, or the people who just aren't going to wake up and get anything, their world is cool in their world, and they're not going to be accepting of anything that makes changes. And so understanding that this is not a war and not a battle, and there's nothing to be won or lost, the other side does think it's a battle, does think in terms of a military and forces like that, and that just doesn't work in the new way. The new way is not about fighting for anything. It's about standing your ground when you know you're right and just carrying on as you can. It's amazing how things work. Karen, are you on? Would you like to talk to me so that we can see if your sound is better?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very clearly.
Okay, I figured out what the issue was.
Good. If you'd like to take over the conversation with Bridgette, you're welcome to do that. In the meantime, let's you and I talk.
Okay.
That Naughty Beaver thing, we heard the first half hour of an hour and a half, and a lot of the stuff he was saying really rings true. For those listeners who are not aware of Naughty Beaver seems to be a Pleiadian, although when you talk to starseeds about which stars they are from, I think we develop an attachment to a location, and that's where we run from, and that the real attachment is something that's internal, not external, and we as thinking people might overthink it and not quite get it right.
I think that's exactly correct.
Can I add something about Naughty Beaver?
Certainly.
He's Naughty Beaver's I don't know how to say it, but I'll wait. I'll wait till somebody's watched more of it before I say what I'm going to say. I better be cautious.
I like Naughty Beaver, but it took me a little while to get where he was coming from, and he will sometimes lapse into things that have no explanation unless you've been watching him. But he has been a channel of Nostradamus, and his interpretation of Dolores Cannon and Nostradamus conversations is a bit different than some of the other interpretations of it.
Yeah, he can go through Nostradamus's manuscripts there, and he can prove that Nostradamus predicted that he would one day be able to decipher these codes. That's the important part of it. Is he was known by Nostradamus way back then that this guy that was an animal but a man with two teeth would be able to decipher this, and it's him.
And that works for me, but the whole thing that I'm worrying about now is that I don't know that time is past, present, future. I think it's frequency along a continuum. And I think we're talking to another continuum that is a node point that resonates with our current continuum. And I think Dolores Cannon told some of the prophecies to Naughty Beaver, such that they weren't really prophecies, but they were a report that got transferred. Bridgette?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just kind of congested. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll pause out.
Yeah, it seems to me that what we're dealing with is something that nobody has seen happen before, because it only happens once in the every so often. And depending on what scale you're on, the every so often could be microseconds or it could be mega thousand years. And that each human has an 80-year period that they appear on Earth, but the Earth that you appear on changes every day when you wake up from your sleep. And so if you think you're waking up on the same Earth that you went to sleep on, you act as though it is the same Earth, and the adventures of the day take you to the Earth that you are now on. And if you have a frequency that resonates on that Earth, you get things done. If you have a frequency that doesn't resonate on that Earth, you try to get things done and find that a lot of people who aren't on your frequency throw monkey wrenches into what you're trying to do. And so aligning frequencies, there's a coarse adjustment and a fine adjustment. And sometimes we're real close together. We only need a little fine adjustment. But that's where emotion starts coming in and pushing things apart. Because instead of dampening the frequencies and overlapping, the frequencies that we were taught are real sharp and don't have a broadband spectrum. And what they call broadband spectrum with the internet is just using the language badly.
I got one more comment to make about Naughty Beaver, then I'm going to shut up about him. The reason I'm so head over heels over this guy is Revelations 12 in the Bible. It happened. September 23rd, 2017, that description in the Bible happened. It only happened one time before that, and it'll never happen again. Now, if that thing happened and it was so visible in the sky, how come nobody else reported it? And it's word per word right out of the Bible. And it's just unbelievable that nobody's talking about it except for this guy. It was a major thing in the sky.
So I don't really know much about, the Naughty Beaver. But we're always like going to our past, right, to solve our future, which leads us, in a fixed wheel. So we never get off the wheel. And that's kind of like how I see, a lot of this working. I totally believe, literally without a shadow of doubt, that whatever we see in the sky or whatever is happening is simulated. It's not real. And sure, we can look at information, but I think that all of it inevitably is leading us to continue to be stuck, and not really, be able to move ahead because there's too much information. People are stuck on, like Lenny was talking about early on, is everybody's stuck on the information, the who, what, why, where, instead of moving towards the ultimate truth of really what's going on here. And what's really going on here is it's a giant global prison camp. And, it's really hard to, deal with these truths, but we're kind of the only ones that are stuck here. The Squatches are not stuck here. There's also werewolf breed of beings that come in and out. My star family, they don't come here at all. And I take that as an indication that there's something really wrong here, or that they can't get in here. But because they can't get in here, what happens is that I have, holographic experiences with them through, the only thing that I can describe it as is, from Harry Potter, which is like a port key. where I have a dream about something like a brick. It happens a lot, actually. It hasn't been happening as much as it did for a while. But what'll happen is that they'll send something. I'll have a dream about it or a flash, and then like I'll be out somewhere and there it'll be like on the corner of a street. Usually it's far away. I have a tendency to find things out in the middle of the desert that aren't old, that are like brand new, that are the things that, I have seen. So usually I pick them up. There's usually some kind of download in them for me, or sometimes I carry them around for quite a bit of time. I really believe that they're actually downloading information into these objects so that they can figure out, kind of like really what the F is going on down here. And I have, had experiences where they, pull me into a holographic, place. And then we have like, an 8-way communication. It happens really rapidly. And then all the pieces of the puzzle come together. And then, like I'm shot back down. And they use all kinds of different things. Triggers can come, in all kinds of different ways and shapes. And I think most of the objects that I end up picking up are usually, I'll know what to do with it. Like I either know if I pick it up, then it downloads information into me, and then I can set it down, once it's, because they don't really want, well, I mean, they haven't really said that, but they don't really want this kind of stuff, other people picking it up. So usually it's going to be in a place where I've been. So the way that I look at it is that in the past, they put it there. And then when I get to it, when I get the message, however long it's going to take or whatever else, and I get to that place in the present moment, in the future, and then I pick up the object, and then usually it will do two things: either download information into me, or I'll carry it around for a period of time and download information into it, and then there'll be a time and place where I set it down. Sometimes right away I set it down once it's downloaded. And so, kind of one of the things I really want to talk about this show is technology, and not the technology that people think exists, not the word that we use for technology, but different kinds of technology, like my star family using, objects that would be found, in this reality to communicate to me, like computer chips. So, for example, one of the freakier things that I've found recently is I was, at my herbal school, and we went to the river, and we all stopped along the Bear River and to do some prayers to the river that were there. And I looked down, and I was sitting there, and I saw the strangest rock, and I could not take my eyes off of it. And it looks like the center of it, like it's sandwiched and layered, is gold. But I took it into somebody, and they looked at it, and it wasn't gold, but they said it was really strange. And then what happened was I had it about a month later, I had it in my van, and the sunlight hit it, and there was a triangle on the very top of it with code bars in it, like a crystal code bar. And so for like a month, I couldn't figure out why, because I hate picking things up. I don't like picking things up. I don't like energies. My last native teacher, Bavado, told me to leave things alone. Don't pick things up, don't touch them, and don't bring them home. So it has to be like a really specific thing, because there's a lot of negative energies out there. There's a lot of negative beings, and they are always leaving objects for people to pick up. Money. I've even walked past $100 bills I found on the ground because I'm not going to pick them up, and I'm not going to touch them. And if I have an impulse, that I want to pick it up because of my left hemisphere, my reptilian part of my brain, I really try to leave things alone, and not pick them up because I don't want the energy that's attached to them. And I don't want whatever the download, people could call it. It's interesting because in this age, we would call that kind of stuff spells or curses or witchcraft, when it's just technology, right? It's a mind control technology. So even like, for example, money is a mind control technology. It is encoded. It has certain colors. It has certain symbols. It has numbers. And so it has like a whole design of frequency. And it's very interesting because once, when I'm watching the population, and especially like in America, and they start to gain wealth, from the money, the fake fiat curse spell money, then what do? Well, then they put out a different bill that may have a different color. Like when people were really starting to kind of get a handle on building wealth, right about the 2008, 2007 crash, there was a new $5 bill that was circulated that had a purple 5 on it.
That's interesting. May I ask a question, Bridgette?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Pertaining to the energy situation, as we've talked before, I meditate by a tree in the park, and I couldn't help but notice, bottle caps, bottles, discarded, wrappers from a cheeseburger, litter. And I get that there's energy on those things, but why do the trees deserve it? And I love the trees, and I want to take care of their areas. So when I am picking that stuff up, I think you recommended that I wear gloves when I do it. Is that a sufficient barrier to, shield myself from the potential energy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're consciously putting on a barrier.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
technology, right? That's the technologies starts kind of in your mind and in creation. And then,
Yes.
like it's applied. So
that's very Nikola Tesla too. He says he envisions this stuff before he ever begins to create it. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So so there was a couple things. Remind me to come back to the rainstone, right? There's a lot of little intricate things I want to talk about about technology in the ancient world, because we want to believe that we're conscious in this time frame, that we get kind of what's going on. We have zero idea. Literally zero idea. We're probably the most unconscious civilization that has ever been. So, and every other beings that they've created, to be here for whatever type of experiment that they've had, they've eradicated, right? We're not having extinctions. Extinctions are not like happening to us. They're being done to us. The flood, there's a lot of ancient texts. Like, I really love Roger Spur. He's a little too biblical for me. And mind you, I grew up with the Bible. My grandmother was a legitimate prophet and an exorcist on my mom's side. Her mother was a shaman. My great grandmother was probably one of the most powerful people that ever has actually graced my path in this world. But so I spent a lot of time dealing with the Bible, and the Bible is kind of a little bit more dangerous because they, attach it with some person on a cross, which is technology, right? it's a technology. So this person on the cross that's pretty much white, especially in America, has blue eyes, looks like you in America, and it's, nailed to a cross. So what that indicates to you is that this is the person, right, without telling you, right, because this is how they use technology against you in your mind, is it's all right hemisphere symbology, right? That's what really goes into your subconscious mind, and that's how you live your life. That's the programming that you get. And so
And it
with the
decreases your
symbology of,
senses, right?
huh?
It decreases your senses, like our born innate senses.
I think a lot of the chemtrails and stuff like that, and the vaccines and a lot of that stuff decrease our senses, and food.
Okay.
Because, if you're not eating, green leafy plants that you're growing in your own yard, they have like 0 DMT in them. And the DMT is, how you sense things, right? It opens the doorway to God. So if you're eating, like Rudolf Steiner talked about, you're eating food from depleted soil or from not soil at all, you're going to be trapped in the prison of your body for your entire life. So you're not going to be sensing a whole lot, right? So for me, in order to make your biological suit run well, has everything to do with how everything else is going to run. But anyway, so I forgot what I was talking about.
Leafy
I got a
tea.
I got a question for you, Bridgette. It's not related to this, but it has to do with mullein.
Yeah.
I was online searching out. You got me interested in this stuff, and I thank you for that. I was online, and I happened to stumble across an article about using mullein seeds to fish with.
Yeah.
It says you grind them up and throw them on top of the water, and it'll stun the fish.
It's also like a $50,000 fine and in jail.
Yeah, I know it's illegal anywhere, but what's in that that's allowing that to happen?
It actually has a neurological. It goes through their gills and stuff, and it causes a temporary neurological shutdown. So they kind of go into like a numbing coma state, and then they float up.
So it does kill them. It doesn't just stun them.
No, it stuns them, but they go into like a coma neurological state, and they will eventually come out of it. But it's not good for them, like if their gills and stuff are not working, and they go belly up for a while.
All right, I'm not suggesting you do it.
Yeah, so I'm sure
I was just curious. It'd be a good survival technique if you had to use.
Yeah, I mean, a good thing to do, like a survival technique, especially dealing with fish and like mullein seed. But what you'd want to do is the day before you're going to use it, ask the fish who want to commit their lives to you for food first, and then tell them, the next day I'm going to come and I'm going to put mullein there. So that way, whatever fish are there, we're deciding to help you.
And for the fish, getting their water from fish to human is very, very important because it's the water that is conscious. And by moving between species to species, that consciousness in the water learns more so that when it goes back into the ocean of all water, it has knowledge that other individual water molecules don't have to teach back to the consciousness water. Water is the only thing that crosses every Fibonacci scale and remains continuous to itself. And the manipulation of water on this planet is probably the first thing that has to stop for the biological system to recover.
Okay, so a couple stories here. So in the original contracts, right, that were created, so there were 7 nations, the first nations that came to this planet when this planet was created. And so this planet was created to be a library of information and plants and all kinds of things that all different multidimensional, physical, living here or traveling through here. And for some reason, this place was made, manufactured, created to house the library. So there was what I was shown was that there was a library that had a technology in it that was very computer-like, but it was biological computer. And beings could come here and they could take that information and knowledge that they had, and they could put their hand on, certain things, and it would download into the major computer program. So all information was going to be accessible from anyone that came here, right? And then this place was also a place where all of the other nations came together to participate here. So the green beings came from the green world. The water came from the water world, and with each encoding activation, then this world was established. So I forget exactly how the seven nations go. A very wise, amazing teacher of mine, Marshall Jack, Paiute elder. I used to take him places during a period of time and spend a lot of time with him. And so while I was driving, he would talk to me about a lot of this stuff. And a lot of it went with what I knew, but I didn't know about the 7 activations that happened before this world was designed, or, how it was designed. And so everything on this planet that is native original, is technology. So, water is a technology. Plants are technologies. All of the microbes are technology. Everything here is technology. All the crystals are technology. Everything is encoded and coded. And I think this is why there's like this really strong rebellion by dark forces against natural world, original world, and including original people that are here. Because the original people came from other worlds, mostly the brown people. They came here to run the technology. And so they were taught all of the, activations, which are even the costumes that they wear, how they move changes the frequencies and energies. The drums, rattles, how they dance, all kinds of different things activate different levels of energies and codes. And so a lot of the indigenous native people, think about it. Science didn't really understand how this whole thing worked until they started. Somebody, I forget when, approached the Dogons, these indigenous people. I believe that they're in Africa, and they, have these crazy, what we would consider costumes or whatever else, and they do these dances, and they know all these kinds of things. Well, it turns out that they knew exactly physics because they came here, and their ancestors, which are the Star Nation, right, taught them before they came here. So they had to find things here in this world to make, like costumes and different kinds of things that had all the prayers and all the encoding in it, in order to be able to do the dances and utilize different kinds of instruments to activate. It's not just frequency. It's not just sound. We have 8, I'm going to call them bodies, We have 8 types of energy fields. And even Albert Einstein said that, if we, weren't programmed to see things in a solid way, we would be able to look at each other and we would be, tornadoes of particles. We would see each other and everything here as tornadoes of particles because that's what they are. So that, it's because of the programming, that we see things the way that they are when we're all just like technologies. And one of the things that I wanted to do before, we close is teach you what would be called, like the 7 direction prayer or the 7, I'm just going to call it the 7 direction activation, which kind of helps people to kind of get more of an understanding. But one of the other things too that I want to talk about was we have to be, one of the bodies or energy fields that's most destroyed is the one that contains the emotions. The emotional body is what I call it. And the reason why people die and can't generate power in their energy field usually has a lot to do with it. Their emotional body is like seriously so far away from them. I've seen people that their emotional body is still left where they were harvested from because it was such a traumatic experience, and they were forced here. And so, those emotional bodies have to be integrated back into the whole system here because it's a whole operating system. And it can't be like a pie where part of it's cut out and thrown away because then it's not a whole pie, right? There's a gap. There's a missing segment, right? So it actually malfunctions a lot of our biosuit technology and how our biosuits like run. And I'm not talking about, soul retrieval. I'm not talking about soul retrieval. I mean, I think that soul retrieval is great. I think that it helps a lot of people. But this is, much further. And in shamanism, the old ancient practices, I dig shamanism. I kind of come from a family that kind of has predisposition for genetics for it from Russia, from traditional Russia. So for me, there isn't anything on this planet that's cleaner, that still is passed down through oral history and practices other than shamanism. So
I got a question for you, Bridgette,
mm-hmm.
right there on that topic. I've told these people here in this group here that my emotions are disconnected from my body. The people close to me die and it doesn't affect me in the least. What can I do to heal that part of me?
Well, you just need you just need to start